Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all? How is everyone doing today? I hope and pray that everybody is well and staying safe as we continue to journey through this year. It's crazy to think we are almost out of February already in this year of 2021. But we here at LifeWire are still trucking, still moving, still here to support you all and all that life has to offer and bring to us. So we want to just say good afternoon to wherever you may be, whether that is here in the US or across the way. We say good afternoon, good morning, good evening to wherever you may be. I hope and pray that you are well. Um, Today, I will be continuing in our theme for this month with the LifeWire team that is under the theme of self love because this is the month of February and just kind of focusing on what love is, talking about self love and looking to support you all and finding ways to continue to anchor yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So I just wanted to continue in with the theme today of self-love and kind of give some tips and tools and some different perspectives on how you continue to operate in self-love and from a healthy place. So I know a lot of my team members, Shar, Candace, and some of my other ladies with LifeWire have been participating and encouraging you all and giving some really good information about how to really sit and stand and operate in self love. And I'm just here as an additional support for you all to kind of give some different techniques, tools, and things to think about when we're talking about healthy self love and self concept. So today I have a PowerPoint sharing under the topic of just kind of looking at values and non-negotiables and boundaries because that is really important when we are looking at what self-love is. So let me share my screen with you and then we can get started. Today won't be super long. I just have some things to share and just kind of giving us some perspective. One second. Um, there we go. Just giving some things to share, some things to be mindful of, some things to kind of think about as we journey and continue to journey through self-love. So today I'm going to talk about values, non-negotiables, and boundaries. So when we hear sometimes the concept of self-love, we can always think about, how do we love ourselves? How can we kind of create um, good self-esteem when we're thinking about self-love? How can we be able to just feel anchored in our sense of self, in our sense of identity, in our sense of how we relate to ourselves and to others? And I think it's really important to really first start off with values and understanding who you are, what you are, why you are, how you are operate, and why you choose to operate that way. And so values really gives us that foundation to be able to say, this is who I am, this is what is important to me. And then from there, we can start to really form and shape our identity, because without that foundation of values, we really don't have a great sense of self to navigate through the world. There's so many different perspectives, ideals, philosophies in life. And when we interact with people in the world, it's important for us to be able to be rooted in that so that when we enter into the world, we have this sense of knowing of who we are. And so when we know something and appreciate it, we can love it and thrive in it in our most authentic selves. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about values, non-negotiables, and boundaries. Okay, so just kind of going through our agenda. The first thing, just exploring values. What are some values that you may have? Have you thought about them? What do those values look like for you? And then I want to kind of illustrate something when we're talking about non-negotiables through the concepts of walls and gates, and then creating boundaries. This is something I've talked about before in a previous month about responsibility and knowing how to set up boundaries so that you can be able to delineate between what's yours and what isn't. Right. So those are good things to be able to really concretely understand so that you can know that this is what is mine and I'm going to protect it. And this is what I am using to protect what is mine. Okay. So here's a quote that I made as, in my time of reflection and just talking with clients too about values and identity and self-love. So it says, once you are grounded in your values, you have identity. When you use your values to set boundaries, you are operating in self-love. Let me read that again. Once you are grounded in your values, you have identity. When you use your values to set boundaries, you are operating in self love. So please, by all means, if you have any interpretations to that, there's no wrong or right way to interpret this or understand it, but just kind of think about what does this mean to you? What could this concept of values, boundaries, what do they have to do with self love? Why is it important to have values when we're thinking about self love? Why is it important to have boundaries and use our values to establish boundaries when we're thinking about self love? So we'll kind of mull on that for a little bit throughout the day and throughout our time today. But just wanted to give that as a starting point for our discussion today about self love. So, core values. Core values are so important. And sometimes when I'm working with clients, I use ACT, which is really focusing on acceptance, values, paying attention to what is important to us and how we shape and move in the world, how we shape our world and move in it. And core values are extremely important in everything that we do because it delineates between who we are and who maybe the next person is. And core values are different for each person. Not to say that another person may be wrong in their values or you're right in your Values is just different. What's important to you, what you hold to be important and of um, value, if you will, is totally up to you. So here is a couple of list of things and values that somebody could really pick from to kind of start to think about, okay, well, what matters to me? Right? What when I walk in this life, when I'm engaging with someone at work or if I'm in a relationship with someone, what do I feel needs to be present? What is really important for me to have consistently and always being present when I am operating in the world, showing up in the world, at work, at school, at at home, with your friends and family. What is important for you. So we have um, curiosity. We have things that you value freedom, meaning that you want to be able to feel free, and that can look different in different areas and aspects of our life. So in work, we may want the freedom of being able to set our own schedule. That's a big thing for me too, because I am not a morning person, you all. That's just not my thing. I like to get up and kind of take my time to slowly get up, and it takes me a while to get up, but once I'm up, right? So I like the freedom of being able to set my schedule. And so that may be important for you in the workplace. Let's see, what's another one? Um, Joy may be something that somebody really values and wants to keep, no matter what they're doing in life, because that gives them this sense of um, it helps. Joy can be a great value to have because it allows people to navigate in the world with a balanced perspective, or being able to choose um, to look for the good even in those moments where it can be challenging. So really striving to create spaces with friends, family, who support in that value of creating and maintaining joy. Sometimes we can have those people who just suck the joy out of places. But if your value is to always be in a place of joy and have those people around you who agree to that, that's when you can start to form and shape and mold and create those boundaries, those walls or those gates for people who can and cannot come in, right? Spirituality, if that's a huge thing for you, right? If your faith and your spirituality and how you operate from a spiritual aspect is important for you, right? You don't want to, excuse me, compromise that by any means, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's in your relationships, whether that's in just what you choose to listen to watch, to read, right? So if your spirituality, your faith is important to you, and that's a core value of yours, you will be willing to protect that by any means necessary. So really just kind of looking at this list of course, this is not all the values that you can have, but this is a good list that we can kind of look at, just to kind of give some language and context to really um, looking and exploring core values. So values aid in creating identity. They are important for providing a foundation, and they are a guide for relationships. So, as I said earlier in the quote about values, once you have formed your values and really sit down and ask yourself some questions about your values, that's when your identity can start to form. You can start to take shape with who you are and how you choose to be based on your values. Um, and so a lot of people can start to wax and wane when the values that they have are easily interchangeable or they change frequently, right? So when we don't have those solid core values, I think that can be an issue with being able to have a sense of self, a sense of identity, because we aren't firm in those. So I have some questions to ask when you're picking through your list of core values. I think it can be important to ask questions um, so that we can really see if this is a core value or if this is a preference, right? So let me kind of go back a little bit. So core values are those values that are unmovable. They don't waver, they don't change. But preferences can kind of be those things that you like, but um, are you can kind of bend if need be. So freedom for me is important, right? Freedom is something that is really important for me in the workspace. However, it's not something that I can't do without, right? So if my workplace or if I'm working kind of a 9 to 5 job that I am not able to set my own schedules, that's okay for me, right? I'm okay with being able to be adaptable in the moment and just kind of doing what I need to do. But I'm not going to, for me as a value for me, my time and being able to focus on my emotional health and have balance, that is a non-negotiable for me. That is something that is a core value. I value that time to be able to have self-care. So I cannot work a job that is not balanced in that aspect where I'm expected to be on the clock 24/7. For me, that's not a core value for me. Being able to have that time to self-care and be emotionally healthy, mentally healthy is a value for me. Whereas opposed to freedom and flexibility, that's more of a preference. If that makes sense. So, kind of comment down below if that makes sense. If you guys have questions, we can try to answer them as we are going along, and even after the video, if you still have questions, reach out and let us know. So hopefully that makes sense between core values and your preferences. So if you're picking from this list or thinking of your own values that you just really resonate with, I want to kind of give some questions to see if those core values are really your core values. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. So let's test your values. So you picked from your list, you have them written down. So here are some questions to ask. Would these values change in a couple of years? Right? The values that you picked and looked through, whether they're from this list right? Or you have your own list. Would any of these core values that you picked, would they change in the next couple of years? Right? So we go through different stages of development, of course, when we're 19 or 29, 39, those are different stages. We learn different things throughout those stages. So if that core value for you will, if beauty for you is a core value at 18, is that still going to be a core value for you at 49, right? If if at 29, adventure is a value for you, but at 59, not so much, right? Let's think through that. Is that a core value or is that something that you just like? My core values are solid and they stay with you throughout the course of your life so that that shapes your identity. That's just who you are. Okay. Another question. Would you sacrifice these core values for money? Now, that's a big thing. We know that money is a real thing that we need to live life, right? Although that's not the only thing that keeps us alive, but we need that in order to survive. So think about would you be willing to sacrifice any of those values for money? Right. I did acknowledge that freedom for me is important and flexibility more so. I would say flexibility more so than freedom, but flexibility and the ability to move and make my own schedule is important to me. However, it's not a core value for me. Right. I can create my own flexibility, um, but the most important thing is to be able to find some time for me to make self care and having that ability to make sure that my mental health is intact and stays intact. Um, so would my flexibility change, right? Would that core value of flexibility change according to my need for money at the moment, right? I would be okay with saying, I may not be able to have this freedom in my schedule because I need to get some money right now, right? So let's be honest. Sometimes we need to make some ends meet. We're trying to, scrape everything together so that we can have our family fed, so that we can just do what we need to do, right? But there's some things that we just cannot do based on our values, right? So if your value is truth, if your core value is truth and you live in that, let's say your boss is asking you to do something or a friend is asking you to do something that is not truthful, right? Just so that you can get money or the company can get money, or the family could get money, right? Are you willing to forego your value of truth in order to get the money? If yes, that's not a core value. That's a preference. That's something that you would like, but that's not a core value. Okay. Again, let me know if that makes sense. Um, have you lost that core value in times of stress, right? If you're under a lot of stress, because this year, last year, coming into this year has been stressful, and continues to kind of show stress as we move forward in this year too, are those values kind of going to be pushed to the side when we're under stress? If so, that's not a core value. And then the last thing, would these values change for another person? Or would you be willing to give up truth for the sake of someone else? Now, of course, we may not we may not say completely honestly something, about somebody's hair or about, somebody's choice of outfits, right? That we may not think is cute, but if they think it's cute, we may go, okay, girl, that's you doing that, right? You're wearing it, right? So, and you may not find it cute, um, and that's okay, right? But in matters of truth, of living in truth, and again, the example of doing something dishonest to gain something else, is that okay with you? Would you be willing to give up some of your core values that really establishes who you are, identifies you as you? Are you willing to give that up for someone else so that you can have that person present, so that you can still connect with that person, right? Are you okay with leaving those values behind just so that person can be with you or that you are with that person? Okay. So, again, coming back to the questions about values, looking at these questions, would you change, would those values, would those values change in a couple of years? Would you sacrifice those core values for money? Have you lost those core values in times of stress? And would you be willing to give up those values or would they change for another person? Right? I know sometimes we can experience different people, whether that is in romantic relationships or friendships or or workspaces, and they teach us different things, but learning for you what you aren't and are able to bend on is going to be important so that your self-love and what you will and won't accept, that's operating in self-love. So whenever we set up those boundaries based off our values, we're saying, okay, these are important to me and this is why, right? So I'm deciding to place those values and use those values as a way to mark between how far I will and will not go, whether that comes to money, whether that comes to relationships, or just in times of stress. This is what I will and will not do. That makes sense? Hoping that makes sense. Okay, so values are extremely important. Once we've identified those core values, those things that will not change, then we can start to create these boundaries and really looking at our non-negotiables and negotiables. So I like visuals because sometimes they can kind of give a different perspective or give a visual to some concepts that I like to talk about. So a lot of my clients that I work with, we talk about non-negotiables and negotiables, specifically in romantic relationships, but they can kind of go across the board. So walls versus gates, and your walls are your non-negotiables. Your gates are your negotiables or your work throughs, right? So non-negotiables are standards that are not open to discussion or modification, right? Those are your core values, right? Your core values are those walls that cannot be penetrated, that cannot be wavered, that won't bend, right? If you really value truth, if you really value honesty, integrity, respect, freedom, whatever your value is, if that is what you value and you're unwilling to move forward, no matter who it is, no matter the situation, no matter the time, that is your value, that is your non negotiable. No one else can say anything, nothing else can happen that will make that that value become something that's bendable, moldable, or easily modified. If that makes sense. So non-negotiables are those things we come into our relationships with, um, saying, okay, this is what I value. This is what I am not going to accept. So if I see, so let's say, for example, a romantic relationship. If someone that you are dating or interested in or getting to know, you're saying, okay, well, um, time is important to me. That's a value of mine to be able to spend time with somebody and have somebody spend time with me. And that's a value for me that I am, that's a non negotiable for me. That in order for a relationship for me to feel secure and to feel anchored, I want to be able to feel like my time is respected as well as me respecting your time. So you have an example where you're dating someone or getting to know someone and they just don't respect your time at all, right? They come and show up um, 15, 20, an hour late, and one instance is okay, but if there's something that continues to be repeated, okay, so now they're not taking heed to your non-negotiable about respecting time. All right, so once you have identified what your values are, it's then important to communicate with others what you value, or else they won't know. Right. So if you're saying time for me is important, express that. Say that time for me is important because I want to feel like you respect this relationship and me, because we both have things to do. When you make time for me, that lets me know that you care, right? So saying what your value is, why it's important to you, that can build communication and understanding with the other person, so that they are aware of what your expectations are. And again, this is all about self love. When we know who we are, how we operate, and why we do a thing, that solidifies for us our identity. And then we can be able to express that to other people so that, excuse me, so that they know what we are expecting based off of what's important to us. Right. So if I'm saying my time is important and I want to be able to share that time with you because I care for you, please show up. You right? Or if you're going to be late, let me know. If I'm going to be late, I'll let you know because I care about the time that we're spending together, because that lets me know you're making space for me. Right? So having those moments of communication and letting people know why that's important to you is building up your ability to kind of see, okay, this person is someone I can let in, or this person is someone that is not taking heed to the things that are important to me. So that may be an indication of how they may kind of show up in other areas of your life as well. So a non-negotiable is something that you are not willing to compromise on. Think about it as a wall. You can't penetrate through that. There's no area for flexibility, right? But a negotiable is something that you're willing to work through. You're willing to open or close as you see fit. Right. Again, coming back to the example of flexibility with work, right? Even though you may not be able to set your own hours, it's okay, right? You have that flexibility to say, yes, I can take that time, or can we work another time? Yes, I have these designated set of hours that I need to work. Can they maybe be changed around a little bit, or can you work through that so that say if you need to work early in the morning, maybe you are okay with that, because if you work early in the morning, later on in the evening, that gives you more space and time for your self-care, right? So kind of looking at what are some things that you are willing to accept without completely compromising your values. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So this concept of gates. So a gate still protects, right? It still gives some protection because it has that ability to close if need be, but it's not as firm as a wall, right? It has the ability to open and close. It has the ability to be adaptable if need be, to have some things come in or go out. But it still protects. It still has the sense of, okay, this is um, when I'm ready for it to close, I'm going to close it. Or if I need to open it to be more flexible, then I'll do that as well. So walls and gates are kind of those non-negotiables and negotiables, things you're willing to work through, work around, so that your values are still intact, but you can kind of flex it a little bit so that you can get what you need to do, what you need to do, or so that the relationship, whether that is a work relationship, a friendship, or a romantic relationship, where both people can kind of come to an agreement where they feel safe and secure and not feeling that their values are compromised at all. So sorry, let me say that one more time. So gates and non-negotiables are those things that we can work through where we come to a compromise where both people are able to say, okay, I'm willing to do this and work with you here, but it's still protecting our individual values as well, right? So it's a preference that you're willing to work through in order to get a common goal to come to fruition or be able to just make something work without compromising your values, right? So non-negotiables are something that you're just not going to compromise at all. This is what I value. This is what is important to me. And if something presents itself that is going to cause that value to be threatened in any way, I won't even engage with that. A negotiable is something, okay, this is something that I don't really, um, something that isn't a direct threat to my boundary or to my excuse me to my value. It's more something I don't, I wouldn't necessarily always do, but I'm willing to work around it so that something can get done, or so that both people feel supported in whatever we need to do. And it also keeps your values intact as well. So I'm hoping that makes sense. Again, if you have questions, please let us know. But again, when we're looking at what's a value or what's a kind of preference or a negotiable, really coming back to looking at, is this something that you are willing to bend on? Is this something you're willing to change? Is this something that you feel like will change over time? If so, that's not a value. That's something that is more of a negotiable, something that is a preference, something that you feel that will be that can wax and wane over the years. But non-negotiables and your values cannot be compromised, cannot be persuaded or talked out of. That is something that is solid. It's a wall that cannot be penetrated. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. So once we've been able to establish and affirm and confirm and communicate that to others, right, we have our boundaries. We can start to set those boundaries with people. Okay, so looking at how to utilize, you kind of move my face around here, try to utilizing our values to create boundaries, right? So we can look at this visual here. I value creative flow. So I need minimal calls and meetings, right? So if you're talking about, we're looking at work, you value how you can just kind of flow in your work, how you can have that flexibility again, that freedom to do what you need to do in order to get your work done. That's what you value. So communicate. I need minimal calls today, right? I need minimal meetings, right, in order to be able to be effective in what I'm doing at work, or with my children or with my spouse, right? Having that value, communicating, and then doing, right? You'll honor it by scheduling things only when it's critical. Right. So again, when we have that value, we have that identity, we know who we are and how we are and why it's important to us, then we have to communicate that, because we can know a thing, we can know what our values are, but unless we communicate that to other people, they won't know, right? Then they cannot be held responsible if they do or don't do, honor your value. They don't know what your value is. So you have to communicate that to them. Um, and then you also have to take action on your part as well by setting up these standards, setting up these boundaries, making a schedule, creating a list to say, okay, this is what I will do as well to ensure that my values stay intact, so that I'm protecting myself, so that I'm continuing to feel I'm grounded and anchored in my own being. Quality time, like you said, I value quality time. So I'm going to focus. So what I need is to have one-on-one connections. I'm focused on one-on-one, and you'll do that. You'll value that by making weekly date nights, right? That's something that's important to you. You'll communicate that to whomever you need to communicate that to. And then you'll follow up with the action saying, okay, well, this is important to me. I need this, so I'm going to do this. Right. So I hope that's making sense. And it flows. This is what you've identified, this is what you've communicated, and this is what you'll do. Right. Boundaries require action on our part. Um, or else you're just saying things. You got to say and do, right? And then your well-being is important. So you need those times of rest and those off hours, right? So what you've established is your boundary. I'm not going to work on the weekends. That's a big thing for me. I do not work on weekends because I value my well-being. I value mental health and self-care. So I say, hey, whoever I'm working with or communicating to, or my different relationships, I say, okay, these time guys, these are my off hours. I cannot talk to you or communicate with you during this time. I need to sleep, I need to eat, I need to be goofy, I need to do whatever I need to do to help me be balanced in my well-being. And that way I'm staying true to who I am. I'm loving on myself because that is important to me. I love myself, so I'm not going to burn myself out. Right? I cherish my body, so I'm going to give it time for rest. Right? So those are some ways to identify your value, communicate it, and then follow it up by action. Those are important. Okay, so different areas of boundaries, 5 different boundaries that you can have in different areas: emotional boundaries, material boundaries, excuse me, time and energy, mental and physical. Right, so all of these things are important. Right, okay, so take a look at those. Right, which are important to you. Coming back to that time and energy, boundaries, setting those boundaries around time, lateness, when to contact, favors, free labor. If you're going to be late, please text me and let me know, right? Your time, you value your time. So you say, this is what I need. I need you to text me if you're going to be late, or if you changed plans, right? Let me know that. Okay. Do that by a certain time. Say, okay, I value my time, so I need you to text me, communicate to me. Um, and please do that by texting, calling, or at least letting me know if you can an hour to 24 hours ahead of time, right? So communicate that. This is an important step because with our values, we can know them and be solidified in them. But I think when it comes to being able to communicate them, that's when we kind of find it becomes harder because sometimes when we feel like we have to communicate and set those boundaries, we often get in this place where we're saying, "Oh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings," right? But I want to offer a different perspective. What happens when you don't honor your values? What are the detriments of you not setting those boundaries, right? You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. However, what how do you suffer? Right? So it's important for us to say our values are what our values are because this is important to me. And this is important to me because I love myself. Boundaries are essentially a reflection of our self-love. right? When we know our values, operate in them, and then create boundaries based on those values, we're operating in self-love. So when we create them, it's not only just to say, no, I don't want to do this, or you need to do that, right? Is to also say that I need this time for myself. This is important for me. This is what makes me feel happy. This is what makes me feel anchored. This is what makes me feel balanced. So I need this. And I'm requiring it from whomever I'm choosing to let in, right? And so it's important to pay attention to when you set those boundaries for people, how they respond, right? So if they're responding with hesitation, if they're responding with just kind of ignoring you, then we may need to look at, okay, red flag. We may have to go back to the drawing board with this person, right? So let's kind of look when your boundaries aren't respected, right? What do we need to do? We need to really sit down and name your limits. You have to set your boundaries, right? If you are unsure of what your boundaries are, or what should be boundaries for you, go back to your values. What's important to you, right? Your values, again, like I said in the beginning, it is the foundation. If this is going to come against your core value, or if this is threatening your value, kind of look at, is this worth engaging with? Is this person worth engaging with, right? Do you need to protect yourself from this? So name your limits, set your boundaries. Um, set your boundaries and kind of look at, okay, are they being respected? If not, you really have to name it. You have to tune into your feelings to say, okay, I'm telling this person these are my values, um, but they continue to disrespect them. Pay attention to how you feel. I know sometimes we can kind of dismiss our emotions and say that, well, don't go off of emotions. I don't like to, as a clinician, I don't really like to always dismiss our emotions because they can help us have an indication of something that may be wrong or something that we may need to give more attention to. When our emotions are balanced, they can be a great indicator that something needs to change or shift. But if you're communicating with somebody and you're letting know what your boundaries are and they still aren't being respected, how is that making you feel? Right? When they don't respect it, what is that saying to you? How are you sitting in that? How do you feel? Right? So being able to tune into your emotions and your feelings can help you to say, okay, I need to be more diligent about keeping this as a boundary because this is what I value. Right? Okay, so be direct as well. Number 3, be direct when you're giving your boundaries. And if your boundaries are continuously being dishonored, really having to communicate again, okay, well, this is what I value, this is what I need, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm requiring you to do. If you cannot do that, then we cannot be friends, we cannot be in a relationship, we cannot be work partners, the end, period. Have a nice day. Right? That's not being mean, that's honoring you. That is that is a value for you, that is something that is important for you. So you have to stick to that. Right? People will honor you more when you are consistent with your values. They know not to come to you with that thing because, oh, Justine does not like when her time is wasted. Be on time when Justine is around, right? So let that, being consistent and direct about your expectations from people will consistently let them know that this is a value for her. So honor that, or him. So honor that, right? So, and give yourself permission to speak, right? You took the time to set out your values. You took the time to create whatever you needed to create. So give yourself permission to require people to respect that. Give yourself permission to speak your truth about whatever it is that you value and how you are required for people, how you are requiring people to treat you. So give yourself permission to speak your truth and to require things from people. Okay. Um, Practice self-awareness by asking those why questions again. Is this a value for me? Right? If this is a value, is this value going to change? Is this value susceptible to being um, thrown out the window when money comes into the picture, right? So be very honest with yourself, right? And sorry guys, I probably should have changed this title, excuse me, but it's really looking at how to keep your boundaries, right? How to maintain and keep your boundaries and kind of being aware of what to do when they aren't respected. So setting those limits, continuing to be direct, tuning into your emotions, um, and just making that time um, to check in with yourself. So really, again, ask yourself what my value is, why it's important for me, what I need based on those values, and what do I need to do so that those values stay intact. That's when our boundaries start to come in. Okay, this is what I will do. This is what I won't do. This is what I'm willing to negotiate with. This is what I'm not willing to negotiate with. Right. So all of that comes into play when we're looking at self-love. So all of that is so important when we're taking a moment to stay, when we're taking a step back to say, okay, this is what's going to really shape me, ground me, and secure me in myself, in my love, because I value my peace. I value time to self. I value just having that ability to be honest with whomever or wherever I am. So, the benefits of values and boundaries in relation to self love, it increases your self esteem. Right? When you know who you are, your values, and how to express, communicate, and live out your boundaries in a healthy and balanced way, you are sure of who you are. You know who you are. Your self-esteem increases. It promotes independence, right? So when you're communicating to somebody about this is what I will or will not do, you're saying that, okay, I'm okay whether if you don't respect this, you got to go, right? And that promotes independence so that you are assured that you can do whatever, regardless, regardless of this person, if this promotion, if this whatever is present in your life or not. You are whole within yourself, whether this person, this thing is present or not. So it promotes independence. It increases mental health by reducing your stress. I mean, I promise you, when you set your boundaries, when you start saying no to people or saying not right now, I promise you, sleep comes a lot easier, right? When we make it a practice, it may feel a little uncomfortable starting off, but when we make it a practice and being mindful that I'm doing this because I need this, because this is valuable to me, because I love myself, right? I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do this in this way right now. Right, so it increases your mental health by being able to delineate between what you're going to do, what you're not going to do, and then what you are requiring from other people to do as it relates to your values and how they are to treat you. And then it helps establish and identify healthy relationships. Right, so boundaries, sometimes we can think that boundaries are not to be present in romantic relationships. I challenge that with my clients all the time. We need boundaries in romantic relationships too, so that it doesn't feel like this codependence, right? Sometimes you just need some space. You need space from people, right? Not to say that you're taking that space because you don't love them. No, I need some time for myself to kind of just think through things, right? Really ask myself some why questions, come back to my values. or you just may need some time to yourself, and that is okay, right? We are all, different people with different life experiences, with different ways of understanding, interpreting, living through the world. And it's okay to ask for those moments, for boundaries. Asking, it's okay to ask for those things that that you need in relationships with people. So these are just some things to kind of be mindful of when you're thinking of your values and creating those boundaries. These are some benefits. Your self-esteem goes up, you have more independence, your mental health is in a balanced place, and you can have healthy relationships because you're starting with self first. This is what's valuable to me. This is what I need as a result of my values. This is what I will and will not do, right? These are my boundaries, right? And then all of that is grounded and rooted in your self-love. All of that is protecting your peace, your integrity, your time, your physical health, right? All of that is protecting yourself. You don't set boundaries or put up a wall to protect something invaluable. All of this is rooted in self love. You create these standards because something valuable is within those walls or that gate, right? Your heart is valuable. Protect your heart, protect your mind. You know, use the tools, the resources, your voice as as a protective shield around who you are. You are valuable, you have value, you are worthy. So protect that. Protect who you are with your values and with your boundaries. So hope this was clear. I know I kind of talked through a couple different things, the different concepts, and used different analogies and metaphors for different things. But really, at the end of the day, we really want you all to be able to really value yourself, and really sit in a healthy, balanced self love, right? Being rooted in your values, having that foundation for yourself so that you can be able to navigate through this world that is very, very unpredictable. The world's values change all the time, right? But when you are sure of what's important to you, what's valuable to you, then you can show up in the world unbothered by how the world changes constantly, right? You're solid in who you are, and you will operate from this place of, of knowledge of self and self-love. So when you find your values, so I'm going to come back to the quote that I talked about before, when you are grounded in your values, you have identity. When you use your values to set boundaries, you are operating in self-love. Okay? Come back to your values. Find what's important for you. Ask yourself those questions. Once you've asked yourself those questions, and you said, no, I'm not willing to change, they won't change. Those are your core values. Once you've established your core values, communicate them. Right? Communicate them so that other people know what they are and be active in them. What are you going to put in place so that your values are honored and are protected? And then what are you requiring from other people so that your values continue to be respected and that you ultimately are reflecting self love, operating in self love? Okay. So, again, I hope that was clear. I hope that gave some good insight or different perspectives of thinking about things, as it relates to our self love. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, at LifeWire. I'm sure we can have, our support support team. I'm ready to connect with you if you have any questions. I'm ready to be able to reach out to you, connect you with one of us if you have any questions regarding resources, materials, anything like that. Please reach out to us and know that you are valuable. What is important to you matters, and uphold that. Continue to operate in that because that is the highest form of self love. All right. All right, wonderful people. I pray that you continue to stay safe and well during this time that we're in. Do something that makes you laugh, do something that brings you joy, and we'll talk with you soon. Have a great day.